Good morning, Crew 14. It's good to be back with you today. I was thinking last night that Roz is having to learn a new way of doing things and having to learn a new normal life on the farm rather than out in the wilderness. And it was making me think that right now we're having to learn a new normal and a new routine too. And it seems like it's very hard right now, and probably you might be a little bit bored. I know I'm a lot bored, and you might be missing your friends, and I know that I'm missing you a lot. And you're not able to go places, which is really strange. So try to find some comfort in Roz's experiences and the fact that she also is having to learn a new life, very much just like us. So today from the Wild Robot Escapes, we are going to start at chapter 17. The chapter is called The Birds, so maybe there'll be some more information about Brightbill. You can hear the birds in my backyard right now. I hope that you're looking around trying to find birds in your backyard. Try to find something beautiful in nature today. That's your goal. So I hope you're doing well, and I am excited for today's chapters. So give me a second to set it up. Uh-oh, my dog is barking. Okay, chapter 17, The Birds. Hilltop Farm was home to many birds. Swallows were always swooping low across the grass and picking off insects. Crows cawed from the fields like a gang of hecklers. At night, owls glided through the countryside, silently searching for furry little meals. The robot was stuck on that farm, but the birds were free to go anywhere they ever pleased. Lucky birds. One day, Roz was standing in the pasture admiring a hawk as he soared through the sky. When the cows began grazing around her, their slow footsteps crunched in the grass, their teeth chewed and chewed, their tails flicked at flies. All the while, Roz stood there staring at the hawk. And then came Lily's soft voice. "What are you thinking about, Roz?" The robot turned to the calf. "I am thinking about Brightbill," she said. "It was not so long ago that I was watching my son soar through the sky. That seems like another lifetime." "You must hate your new life," said Annabelle. "I can't say I blame you. Farming looks like such grueling work." "Actually, I like farming," said Roz. "Somehow it feels right to spend long hours working with machines and tools and crops and animals. But I miss my old life on the island." Tess had a mouthful of dandelions, but that didn't stop her from speaking. "Maybe you should start thinking of this farm as your new home. That island is awfully far away. There's a good chance you'll never make it back there." "Don't say that," cried Lily. "Roz just has to make it home. She needs to be with Brightbill and her friends." Tess is right. I may never make it home. If I were a bird like my son, I could fly home on my own anytime I wanted, but I am only a robot. Nobody spoke after that. The cows went back to grazing, and Roz went back to admiring the hawk. Her eyes followed the bird as it soared through the sky, free to go wherever he pleased. Chapter 18, The Entertaining Robot. The children wandered out behind the farm buildings, through a clearing, and over to the old oak tree. It was the same tree their father had climbed when he was a boy. Mr. Sharif's initials were carved into the bark at the bottom of a long list of initials. For generations, all the Sharifs had carved their initials into the tree, going back to the ancestors who first built the farm. Someday the children would add their initials to the list. Beneath the leafy branches was a scattering of acorns. Jad cleared a spot for himself, sat down, and pulled a small computer from his pocket while Jaya climbed above. The siblings spent the afternoon there lazing around the tree until the robot marched past carrying the big, heavy toolbox. "What you doing, Roz?" called Jad. The robot stopped. "The drone has crash-landed again," she said. "I am going to fix it again. Do you need any help?" "I do not need help." "I'm bored," said Jaya, her legs dangling above her brother's head. Can you do something fun, Roz?" The robot put down her toolbox and said, "What would you like me to do?" "I don't know," said Jaya, thinking hard. "Can you do a backflip?" "Yes, I can do a backflip." A grin spread across the girl's face. "Roz, I order you to do a backflip." At that, Roz crouched, and then she leaped into the air, flipped backwards, and gently landed on her feet. A perfect backflip. Jaya put his computer away. Jad put his computer away. Jaya jumped down from her branch. The children were impressed. "What else can you do?" said Jad. "Can you juggle?" "Yes, I can juggle." "I order you to juggle, some of these acorns." Roz walked up to the tree, picked 3 large acorns from the ground, and began juggling them in perfect rhythm. Jaya studied the robot's movements and then began tossing acorns in the air as well. The first one went a little too high, the next one went a little too far, and as soon as they were all tumbling back on the grass. "Do you know any joke?" said Jad. "Why did the chicken cross the road?" "Never mind," Jad scratching his head. "Can you tell us a story?" "What kind of story do you want to hear?" "A robot story," said Jad. "An animal story," said Jaya. "How about a robot and an animal story?" said Roz. The children smiled at each other. Then they sat against a tree and looked up at their robot storyteller. "Once upon a time, there was a robot who lived alone on an island," Roz began. "She spent her time wandering across the mountains and forests and meadows, and then something terrible happened. Rocks fell, and the robot tumbled off a cliff. She survived the fall, but sadly the rocks killed 2 geese and smashed 4 of their eggs. The robot stood there, staring at the poor goose family until she heard a tiny voice peeping from somewhere nearby. She followed the peeping voice and discovered a perfect goose egg sunk in the dirt. The robot carefully picked up the egg and carried it away. When the gooseling hatched from his shell, the first thing he saw was the robot looking back. "Mama, Mama," he peeped. The gosling looked at the robot and his mother, and from that day, the gosling thought the robot was his mother, and from that day, she was. The robot adopted the gosling and her son, and together they made a funny little happy family. The end. The children sat there and thought about Roz's strange story, and then they looked up to her and said, "What happened next?" Chapter 19, The Storytellers. Roz and the children had a new routine. Several times a week, they'd gather together or beneath the oak tree, and Roz would tell stories about the robot on the island. The children loved hearing how the robot survived mudslides and bear attacks and harsh winter weather. They loved hearing how she befriended the island animals, but the stories they loved most were about the robot and her son, the goose. He sounded like such a nice goose. Roz told the children story after story. What she couldn't tell them, was that the story was true, and they were about her. The children wanted to get in on the storytelling fun. Jaya told adventure stories about dragons and monsters. Jad told silly stories about aliens and outer space. But as the children grew more comfortable with Roz, they began talking about their own lives. They talked about growing up in the country. They talked about their schoolmates and their friends and their family. They talked about how their parents used to work together on the farm and how perfect every day was before the accident. In an instant, their lives were upended. Their mother was gone and their father was injured. Mr. Sharif tried to keep the farm going by himself, but there was so much to do, and he was so weak now. The farm machines powered along, doing their jobs as usual, but they needed to be maintained and monitored. Eventually, the machines started breaking down and the farm started falling to pieces. The children wondered if their life would ever feel normal again. "That's why we got you, Roz," said the girl. "We needed you to save this place." "And that's exactly what you're doing," said the boy with a smile. So tomorrow we'll start chapter 20, The Wild Animals. Question for the day. Do you think Jad and Jaya will help Roz if she asks them? Why? I want you to start this time, in my opinion. So I want you to think, if Roz asks Jaya and Jad to help her escape and go back to be with Brightbill, do you think that the children will help him or help her? So thank you for listening today, and I look forward to tomorrow. Bye.